Right now with an opportunity. We can begin to mobilize in our community to take on the police in our community. We should demand decentralization of the police. There is enough data now to show that racial profiling is the major cause of mass incarceration. We know that our communities have been made into crime zones, into free fire zones, so that the police could, one, make money off of corruption, and two, contain us in fratricidal feuds and fratricidal attitudes. Our children are in the streets shooting each other. We have generations that are afraid of their own children, afraid to go out into the streets, so they call for the police. We need more cops. And then we know that there's never a situation that the police can come to that they can't make worse. So how do we do this? How do we begin to put this on the referendum? You know it's fashionable now to call for mass incarceration, to talk about it. It's being talked about on all the university campuses. Everybody from Cornell West to Al Sharpton to CNN are now talking about mass incarceration. And with the strikes in Pelican Bay, it's becoming internationally embarrassing for the United States. They're talking about the dungeons of the 21st century are U.S. maximum security prisons. These are articles that are in the international news today as we speak. Go to Al Jazeera website and you'll see some of these articles that were written by people thousands of miles away who have heard about the hunger strike in Pelican Bay. The prisoners in Georgia went on strike as undocumented, marginalized workers. Prison has become an industry. And it's become an industry that feeds off the flesh and the economics of the poor black community. And we have to show our community that. Once we begin to organize around these things that affect everybody, getting prisoners the right to vote, ex-felons, getting them back on the right to vote, getting their families involved in the political process. This means, like the sister said, we have to go out into the streets, knock on the doors and say, do you have someone that's incarcerated? Do you know how many people in New York City have incarcerated relatives, and when the census came around, they didn't count those incarcerated relatives as living in their household? But the prison and the community where the prison is at counted those inmates in prison.
That's right.
On the census. And they qualified for more money. They qualified for a different percentage of the vote in the state legislature. They're using our black flesh to get over. Understand this. There's nothing mysterious about this equation. When almost 100% of the prisoners only come from 3 communities in a state, there's something wrong with that paradigm. And we need to organize around that. Once we organize around that, then the issues of how prisoners are treated, why they're in prison, the issue of our political prisoners, then becomes something everybody could relate to. Everybody could relate to. As it is now, everybody thinks they're disconnected from the political prisoners and what's happening. So I'm going to end with this, and I just want to say, there are practical things that we can do today to mobilize in our communities around issues that affect us. And I think the first thing that we have to do today, at this time, and we're already late, is to organize on the grassroots level to decentralize public safety in our communities. That means police, fire departments, EMS, everything that relates to our public safety should be under our administrative and tactical control. We have to control the police in our community. It's not just a matter of talking. It's not just a matter of having the police chief come in here and he's going to talk about different training methods and we're going to try this and we're going to try that. We have to have a new approach. We have to say, you're the best police chief that we ever had and you can't stop crime. Means that your training and your institution is obsolete. It's no longer up to the task. We have to create new institutions. And one institution that we have to create is decentralized policing. With decentralized policing, the community determines the policing policy in their district. You will elect the community public safety representatives. You elect them. You know in your community who's responsible, who has morality, who has ethics, who you can depend on. So just organizing people for a referendum puts you in direct contact with the masses of people in this city or in any city. And then you could begin to educate them. As the sister pointed out, some people think they can organize a movement by the internet. You can't. All that stuff they talked about, the Arab Spring, and it was organized on Twitter, is crap. It was not organized on Twitter. There were young people in those countries that struggled and struggled, that got beaten in the head, that went to prison, and went into exile, and their work finally came to fruition. Technology only allowed for better communications, instant communications. So I'm saying, brothers and sisters, in closing, let's look at our situation today, and I think that's what the brother Matulu was trying to point out, in terms of having a strategic vision about how we should approach our situation and our political prisoners. But I'm saying that this strategic vision has to fit into where we are at now, in this place, in this time, in this country. And right now, we're living under the auspices of a democratic fascist state, a racist state that views all of its citizens as potential terrorists. And that any one of us who talks about solidarity today with a liberation movement could go to prison for supporting a terrorist organization. Back in the day, we could stand up and say, Viva la continua, the Brazilian struggle. We could talk about the Palestinians. You stand up today and advocate Palestinian statehood or advocate your solidarity with Hamas, and your butt is going to jail. And this is a country that's supposed to be about freedom of speech. It's democratic fascism. You see? So if we understand that we cannot even express solidarity with our African brothers if they're on the FTO, the list of the State Department of terrorist organizations. Imam Jamil is in a prison that is comparable to Guantanamo.
Yes.
It's comparable to Guantanamo. Pelican Bay is comparable to Bagram Air Base.
Yes.
Huh? Right here, right now. And so we really have to understand where the state has went to and how we have to respond to the state power. It's no longer necessary to ask Obama to free the political prisoners. Obama doesn't have jurisdiction to free the political prisoners. He's the president of the United States. The only jurisdiction he got is federal. If the prisoners are in state custody, forget about it. Imam Jamil Al-Amin is not a federal prisoner. He went under a federal compact agreement to state prisons. The same way with Sundiata Akoli. They were state prisoners. Yeah. He was convicted in the state of Georgia, but he's in federal prison. How Sundiata Akoli was convicted in New Jersey. He's in a state prison. He's in a federal prison. We need to understand that the synergy between federal and state is no longer applicable. There is no longer a distinction to be made. There is a clear path that we have to follow. We have to organize the masses of black and African and poor people in this country, ally ourselves with the immigration movements in this country, because there's a lot of people coming in this country that don't have our legacy of struggle and don't understand these crackers like we understand them. So they'll appease them and they'll try to reform them, and it won't work. We have to be about resistance, not reform. We have to be about abolishment of the prison system, not reform. The prison system in the United States is inhumane.
That's right.
The prison system in the United States is racist. The prison system in the United States is exploitative. And we have to show our community how it impacts on their lives every day. And once we do that, we could talk about political prisoners in a context where people will say, hey, free Jamil Al-Amin, because he stood up for this before we even knew about it. And so I just wanted to offer that. Let's develop struggle programs in Atlanta that will meet our needs. Let's talk about decentralization. Let's talk about going to the people and getting their votes. We have to organize independent political parties, independent, based on our nationalism, based on our nationalism, based on our Islam, independent political clubs. So that when these knuckleheads run for little consul office, they got to come to us with their hat in their hand, and we got to say to them, what's your position on political prisoners? What's your position on mass incarceration?